Picture the most beautiful palace ever built. Gold walls, silver doors, silk curtains moving in warm air, the scent of perfume floating through endless halls. Now imagine something else hiding behind those walls. The smell of blood. The sound of something alive begging not to die. This is not a dungeon under the palace. This is the palace. This is the private world of Xerxes I, the man who called himself King of Kings. History remembers him as a giant ruler, a conqueror, a man chosen by the gods. But what history does not show you is what happened after the doors closed. Because inside those golden rooms lived another power. Her name was Amestris. And she was waiting. Waiting for the perfect day. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting to turn a palace into a nightmare. This is not a story about battles. This is a story about what happens when power becomes personal. When humiliation turns into obsession. When love turns into punishment. And when a queen decides someone must pay. Stay with us till the end for valuable insights. Like, subscribe, and share to support the channel. The palace of ancient Persia was not just large. It was overwhelming. Marble floors reflected torchlight like still water. Pillars rose high enough to make a man feel small. Gold-covered doors. Carvings told stories of victories and kings blessed by heaven. Servants moved quietly, trained to never look directly at the throne. Guards stood still like statues. Musicians played soft music in the background, always ready to change the mood if the king desired it. To the outside world, this was perfection. This was power. This was glory. At the center of it all sat Xerxes. He wore jewels that could feed cities for years. He spoke, and entire provinces listened. He lifted a hand, and thousands obeyed. But something inside him had changed. Years earlier, he had marched toward Greece with the largest army the world had ever seen. He believed he was unstoppable. He believed the gods themselves had chosen him. Then came defeat. Ships burned. Soldiers drowned. His legend cracked. When he returned home, the palace still bowed to him. But the whispers had begun. And Xerxes could feel them. He no longer looked outward at enemies across the sea. He looked inward. Into the palace. Into the people around him. The palace became his world. A world where he could still control everything. Inside those walls, no one truly belonged to themselves. Servants were chosen for beauty or strength. Women were selected and prepared like rare objects. If the king wanted someone new appeared. If he grew bored, they disappeared. No one asked questions. And when strange sounds echoed from behind thick curtains, no one turned their head. The smell of iron sometimes mixed with incense. The king's animals were fed well. Too well. People knew something was wrong. But fear is stronger than curiosity. And then there was Amestris. She stood beside Xerxes during ceremonies. She wore silk, jewels, and a calm expression that never broke. She was not loud. She did not argue in public. She did not need to. Because Amestris understood something most people never learn. Power is not about shouting. Power is about waiting. She watched her husband carefully. She saw how he changed after Greece. She saw how his eyes lingered too long on certain faces. She saw how servants trembled more than before. And she began to plan. There was a certain day each year when the king could not refuse a request. A sacred day. A day when he must give anything asked of him. Amestris circled that day in her mind. And she waited. Because in a palace where everyone fears the king, sometimes the most dangerous person in the room is the one standing beside him. After the defeat in Greece, something inside Xerxes first did not heal. On the outside, nothing seemed different. The empire was still huge. Gold still arrived from distant lands. Governors still bowed when his name was spoken. The throne room still shined under torchlight. But inside the king, there was a wound. And wounded pride can be more dangerous than open hatred. Xerxes had once believed he was untouchable. When he marched toward Greece, he felt like a god walking on earth. He had even ordered the sea itself to be punished when it resisted him. That was the level of power he believed he had. But defeat changed the story. He returned to his palace with victory songs replaced by silence. No one dared to speak badly about him. But silence can be louder than insults. He felt it. He felt how people avoided talking about Greece. He felt how generals spoke more carefully. He felt how some foreign visitors looked at him with less fear. And a king who feels smaller than before will search for something to make himself feel big again. Xerxes stopped looking at foreign lands. He looked at his own palace. Inside those walls, he could still control everything. Every servant. Every guard. Every woman brought into his private rooms. In the harem, women were treated like decorations. They were chosen, dressed, and presented like treasures. If the king smiled at one of them, her life changed. If he turned away, she vanished into the shadows. There were rules. But those rules only applied to everyone else, not to the king. And as the months passed, Xerxes began to hunger for something more than simple pleasure. He wanted control. He wanted to feel powerful again. And then, one evening during a grand feast, he saw her. She was not the most decorated woman in the hall. She was not trying to attract attention. She was simply calm. She did not shake when the king looked in her direction. She did not lower her eyes too quickly. She moved with quiet dignity. And that small act, standing tall in a palace built on fear, caught his attention. She was the wife of his own brother. The brother who had once dared to question him during the war. The brother who had spoken honestly when others stayed silent. That alone made her dangerous. But what truly drew Xerxes in was something else. She looked like someone who still belonged to herself. And that was something the king could not accept. Desire slowly turned into obsession. He began sending gifts. Jewelry. Fine fabrics. Invitations disguised as family kindness. She refused. Not softly. Not playfully. She refused clearly. She was loyal to her husband. She would not betray him. Not for gold. Not for power. That rejection did not cool Xerxes. It burned him. But he was not foolish enough to force her. Not yet. Taking his brother's wife openly could cause rebellion. His brother had loyal supporters. The empire was already unstable after Greece. So Xerxes made a different choice. If he could not break the mother, he would test the daughter. And that decision would slowly pull the palace toward disaster. Meanwhile, watching from a distance, Amestris saw everything. She saw the gifts. She saw the secret meetings. She saw the way the young girl's confidence began to change. And she began to understand. This was not just an affair. This was humiliation. But Amestris did not react. She did not shout. She did not cry. She continued to wait. Because the day she had chosen was coming closer. And on that day, the king would not be able to say no. The daughter's name was Achaemenid. She was young. She had grown up inside palace walls. She had been raised to respect the throne, to fear it, and to admire it. When the king began giving her attention, it did not feel like danger at first. It felt like sunlight. Jewels arrived at her door. Silk dresses were placed in her chambers. Invitations came with warm words and gentle smiles. The king acted like a caring uncle. Then slowly, he erased that line. In a palace like this, saying no to the king was not a simple choice. Refusal could cost more than pride. It could cost safety. It could cost family. The weight of the throne pressed down without speaking. And under that weight, Achaemenid became his lover. For Xerxes, it was more than desire. It was proof. Proof that nothing in his empire could stand against him. Proof that even the family that had once challenged him would bend. Proof that he was still powerful. But secrets inside palaces never stay secret for long. Servants talk. Guards notice patterns. Eyes observe more than people realize. And no one observed more carefully than Amestris. She noticed the jewelry. She noticed the change in Achaemenid's walk, a new pride, a quiet confidence. She noticed how Xerxes seemed satisfied in a way that felt personal. Inside Amestris' mind, a story formed. She convinced herself that the girl's mother, the same woman who had once refused the king, had planned this. That she had placed her daughter in the king's bed to climb higher. To weaken the queen. To move her own family closer to the throne. Whether that belief was true did not matter. Once Amestris believed it, it became reality. And then came the mistake. One night, in a moment of pleasure and pride, Xerxes made a promise. He swore to Achaemenid that he would give her anything she asked for. Anything. He expected gold, land, more jewels, something easy. Instead, she asked for something else. She asked for the queen's robe. Not just any robe. A robe that Amestris had woven with her own hands. In a palace where servants did everything, that robe was personal. It was sacred. It was a symbol. It said, "I am not replaceable." When Xerxes heard the request, he froze. He tried to convince her to choose something else. Cities. Treasure. Anything. But she reminded him of his oath. The King of Kings had given his word. Would he break it over a piece of cloth? And in that moment, pride ruled him again. He chose his image over his marriage. The robe was taken from Amestris. No one knows what excuse he gave her. Maybe none at all. Soon after, during a public gathering, Amestris saw it. Achaemenid stood in the hall wearing the queen's own robe. Not hidden. Not ashamed. Wearing it proudly. The room felt different. Some people noticed. Some pretended not to. But Amestris saw everything. She did not react. She did not show pain. She did not show anger. She became very still. Very calm. Because now it was clear. This was not a rumor. This was war. And Amestris had already chosen her battlefield. The king's birthday. A sacred day when he must grant any request made publicly. That day was coming. And when it arrived, the robe would not be the only thing taken. Something far worse would be claimed. The king's birthday was not just a celebration. It was a ritual. From sunrise, the palace moved like a living machine. Servants polished silver trays until they shined like mirrors. Musicians tuned their instruments. Guards adjusted their armor again and again. Incense burned in thick clouds, mixing perfume with smoke. On this day, the king became more than a ruler. He became a giver. It was tradition that on his birthday, he could not refuse a request made publicly. If someone of high rank asked for something in front of the court, and the king agreed, his word became sacred. To break it would not just be embarrassing. It would be seen as weak. And Xerxes could not afford to look weak. When Xerxes first entered the hall, he wore full royal dress. Gold threads shined under torchlight. His crown caught every flicker of flame. The room bowed. Wine flowed. Laughter rose and fell. Nobles stepped forward one by one. Some asked for land. Some asked for forgiveness for relatives. Some asked for positions of power. Xerxes granted requests with ease. He smiled. He nodded. He played the role of generous god king perfectly. Beside him stood Amestris. Calm. Beautiful. Watching. She waited until the room felt comfortable again. Until the king was relaxed in his performance. Then she stepped forward. The hall grew quiet. Amestris began by praising him. She spoke of his strength, his wisdom, his role as protector of the empire. Her voice was smooth, respectful. No one sensed the blade hidden inside her words. Then she made her request. She did not ask for gold. She did not ask for land. She asked for the wife of the king's brother. The room froze. It sounded simple on the surface. A queen asking for a woman of the court to serve under her authority. But everyone understood. This was the woman who had once refused the king. This was the mother of the girl wearing the stolen robe. Xerxes understood the trap instantly. If he refused, he would break tradition. He would look weak in front of his entire court. If he agreed, he would be handing his brother's wife to a queen who had been silently burning with rage. He paused. But pride decided faster than thought. He said yes. The word left his mouth. And in that moment, something irreversible began. The celebration continued. Music resumed. Wine was poured. But inside the palace walls, different orders moved quietly. Guards went to collect the woman. She may have believed it was temporary. A formal duty. A change in household. She did not know she had just been handed over as punishment. Amestris did not order a quick death. Death would have been mercy. What she wanted was something else. She wanted a message. The woman was restrained. And then, piece by piece, she was destroyed. Her face was cut. Her nose. Her ears. Her lips. Her body was taken apart slowly. Every part that gave her identity, beauty, voice, removed. Not hidden. Not buried. Fed to the royal dogs. It was not just cruelty. It was a warning. In a court where appearance was power, Amestris erased her completely. She did not kill a rival. She unmade her. When the mutilated woman was returned to her husband, he did not recognize her at first. His world collapsed in seconds. Everything he believed about loyalty, family, and protection shattered. And in that breaking moment, another decision was made. One that would push blood from the palace halls into the open desert. When the broken body of his wife was returned to him, the king's brother did not scream. At first, he did not even move. He just stared. The face he once kissed was gone. The voice that once spoke beside him was silent forever. The woman who had stood proudly in royal halls had been turned into something almost unrecognizable. It was not just cruelty. It was humiliation. It was a message. And he understood it clearly. This was not punishment for a crime. This was revenge for pride. Inside the palace, whispers moved like wind through dry leaves. No one spoke loudly. No one accused directly. But everyone knew where the order had come from. From the queen. And everyone knew who had allowed it. The king. The brother's grief slowly hardened into something else. He remembered Greece. He remembered how he had spoken honestly about the risks of war. He remembered how his brother had not liked being questioned. He remembered how the king had chased after his wife once, and how she had refused him. Now everything made sense. The affair with his daughter. The robe. The public request. This was not random cruelty. It was a trap built from pride and jealousy. And now his family was destroyed because of it. Grief can break a man, but sometimes it sharpens him. Late at night, away from the palace lights, the brother began speaking quietly with loyal soldiers. Many of them had fought in Greece. Many of them felt the empire was changing in the wrong direction. They did not openly attack the throne. Not yet. But anger gathered like a storm on the horizon. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Xerxes first felt something he had not felt before. Fear. Not fear of enemies outside the empire. Fear of enemies inside his own blood. He had thought granting Amestris her request would solve everything. He believed cruelty would end the tension. Instead, it created something worse. Division. Trust inside the royal family was shattered. Every meal felt colder. Every meeting felt heavier. And then, the brother made his move. He did not attack blindly. He tried to gather support first. He approached nobles who had once respected him. He spoke of justice, of honor, of how a king who destroys his own family cannot protect the empire. Some listened. Some stayed silent. But silence in a palace is dangerous, because silence often travels back to the throne. Soon, Xerxes learned of the whispers. And this time, he did not hesitate. There would be no public trial. No negotiation. No second chance. The brother and his sons were arrested before dawn. Chains replaced royal robes. Within hours, they were executed. Quickly. Efficiently. Their bodies were displayed as traitors. The message was clear: blood relation did not protect you from the king. But even as the executions ended the rebellion, something deeper had changed. The empire still stood. The throne was still golden. The palace still shined. But fear now ruled everything. Fear of the queen. Fear of the king. Fear of speaking honestly. Fear of being noticed too much. The Achaemenid dynasty, once proud and powerful, now felt like a beautiful building with cracks inside its foundation. And those cracks would never fully close. The executions ended quickly. The palace returned to silence. Music played again in the halls. Servants walked carefully with golden trays. The gardens were watered. The fountains continued to flow. From the outside, nothing had changed. The empire still stretched across vast lands. Armies still guarded its borders. Taxes still filled the royal treasury. Messengers still rode across deserts carrying orders sealed with royal marks. But something inside the heart of the palace had died. Trust. No one said it out loud. But everyone felt it. After his brother's death, Xerxes first became quieter. He still wore his crown. He still held court. He still spoke with authority. Yet his eyes changed. There was always a small pause before he answered anyone. A small hesitation before granting favor. He had learned something dangerous. If he could destroy his own blood, others could do the same to him. He had used fear to protect his pride. Now fear protected his throne. Beside him, Amestris remained powerful. No one dared to challenge her. No one dared to speak her name with disrespect. She had proven what she was capable of. Her revenge had been complete. But revenge does not erase pain. It only spreads it. In the women's quarters, whispers grew softer. No one wanted to attract attention. No one wanted to wear the wrong dress. No one wanted to be noticed by the king too much. Because attention could lift you high, or destroy you completely. Achaemenid, the daughter who once wore the queen's robe, faded from public view. Some say she continued to live in luxury. Others say she lived quietly, watched carefully, never fully trusted again. Her moment of pride had cost her family everything. And what of the empire? The Achaemenid dynasty was known for greatness, grand architecture, organized systems, powerful armies. It was one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. But inside the golden walls, we see something else. Power mixed with insecurity. Love mixed with jealousy. Tradition mixed with cruelty. This is the part history books often shorten. They list battles. They list territories. They list dates. But they rarely show the human darkness behind royal curtains. The fear of losing control. The hunger to feel important again. The way pride can turn a strong ruler into a dangerous one. Xerxes wanted to prove he was still powerful after Greece. Amestris wanted to prove she could not be replaced. The brother wanted justice. Each of them believed they were right. And each of them left behind blood. In the end, the palace still stood. But it no longer felt unbreakable. Because the greatest danger to an empire is not always an enemy outside its borders. Sometimes it is the weakness inside the throne. The Achaemenid court glittered with gold. Yet beneath that gold was insecurity. Beneath authority was fear. Beneath beauty was violence. And that is the full story, not polished, not softened, not simplified. A story where power did not protect love. Where pride destroyed families. Where revenge echoed louder than loyalty. Empires rise with strength. But they begin to fall the moment fear replaces trust. And inside those shining Persian walls, fear ruled everything. If you enjoy dark untold history, subscribe because we uncover what others won't.